Cool. Welcome everybody to the 10th episode of the Break Even Brothers podcast. I can't believe we made it to
Woohoo.
10 episodes. Yeah, quite a milestone. My name is Bennett, of course, and joined by me as my co-host as always, Brad. How's everything going, Brad? How's your week?
Pretty good. Week 2 complete at Snap. So things have been pretty good. Honestly, this period of my life has been super busy with wedding, move, job, and I think I'm finally coming out to the other side where things are looking pretty good. So kind of like settling in, doing all the onboarding stuff, like financial accounts, insurance, all that kind of boring stuff. But yeah, honestly, pretty good. I can't complain too much. How about you?
Good. Yeah, good. Had a Halloween earlier this week, of course, so that was fun. It's weird having Halloween on a Thursday, but yeah, it was great.
hmm
And busy week with everything else going on with work and stuff like that. But sometimes it's good to be busy. So we'll take it. But yeah, happy to get recording again. I feel like it's been a minute, I think, with
It has
everything going
been.
on.
When's our
Yeah.
last episode? Let's check.
Yeah, I don't
October
know.
14th. Okay, so what, 3
Okay.
weeks ago maybe?
Not 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks ago or so.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Something like that.
What did you dress up as for Halloween?
I'm ashamed to admit I didn't dress up this year. So my
Okay.
kids did, of course, but wife and I just didn't get around to getting costumes, and she was traveling like right before that, so that was my excuse of like just being like
hmm
not ready to put on a costume. It really isn't the reason, of course, but that's what I'll go with. But yeah, didn't do one this year. My kids told me they wanted me to be Mario, from like Mario and
Oh, that would be
Luigi,
good.
but yeah, but didn't ever get around to it. So we'll make it up next year for like a all out costume.
Okay.
What did you do?
Well, yeah, I was waiting for you to ask. So I had this great idea to dress up as myself for the stay-at-home era. So I went into the office in sweatpants and Bucks Bite attire. And I like kind of talked to people around my office. I was like, "Oh, what do you think?" And they're like, "It looks good." And I was like, "No, no, no, this is like me work from home, Brad. This is work from home, Brad, for
Yeah.
the past 12 months." So it was fun, wearing comfy clothes and like wearing all the Bucks Bite swags. That was like my mini costume because I also wanted to get something, but
Yeah.
just with being busy, I didn't have anything. And there's like the full out costumes where you're wearing like the inflatable, or there's like the
Hmm.
minor, like wearing a headpiece or anything. I think I saw one guy in my office is wearing like a full spacesuit, like an astronaut. That was super cool. I was like, wow, that's like a full send, and it looks really good. So
Yeah.
hopefully next year we'll put more effort into it and make something fun because it's, I don't know, fun day to just do whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite costume I've probably ever seen. This is a couple years ago when they were not as common as they are now, but like the inflatables, and it was like where the aliens grabbing the person from
But
behind,
yeah,
you know?
like the chasing them. Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy that was wearing it, I can't remember where we were, but the guy that was wearing it could like sell it so good. Like he'd like run
hmm
backwards and look like the alien was pulling him back. It was hilarious. So
Yeah,
those
those
are
are
some of the
awesome.
best ones. Yeah.
I think they got a little bit, tiring, but seeing them like on TikTok or whatever, I'm like, oh, those are like, it'd be kind of fun to be in one of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I don't, I maybe this is just the accountant in me or just being like frugal, but like I don't want to spend that much money on a costume I'm going to only wear one time or once a
hmm
year if I reuse it. So it's like some of those are like, whatever, 60, $70. I'm just like, I can't stomach
Yeah.
paying that much for something I'm going to wear for 4 hours. I
Yeah.
just, it's
Amazon
not
next
me.
day.
Yeah. Like I'll do something easy. That's probably what the most I'll get out of it. So yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's still fun, but definitely we're ready for Christmas now in our house.
Oh,
So
yeah. Black Friday
everyone's getting
shopping
excited for
too.
that. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Thanksgiving, it's a favorite of mine just for the food and everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, looking forward to it all. But
Nice.
cool, let's jump into something I wanted to kind of catch up with you on. I'm actually wanted to catch up with you on this for a while, and it's about socials and meaning like Instagram, Twitter, and now TikTok and LinkedIn. And the reason why I want to kind of get into it specifically with you is because you actually have a lot of history in building in the
hmm
socials environment. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about some like similarities and like differences we see with like modern social networks versus like how it was probably back maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and some of the products that you had built around those. I wanted to kick it off by saying, and I think we've touched on this in the podcast before, but right when I graduated high school, I had opened or kind of created a quick like MMA apparel business. It's called Southpaw Industries. And part of, when you're trying to run a business and grow is like socials was very much like a thing that you needed to grow on, right? Like that's kind of, and it was
hmm
probably 2010, 2011. So, Twitter was around, Facebook was around, but there was a lot of kind of noise made about like getting really active on those platforms and like promoting your product. And I remember talking about it with you, and we talk about like this. concept. I don't know if you remember it or if like if you'd kind of call it something differently, but do you remember we kind of tried to think about like a ratio of like where it's good to have a lot of
Exactly.
followers, but not follow too many people. Like, do you remember that, right? Like, and
I
kind
remember
of,
that distinctly. Yeah, I think when you looked at brands online, it looked really bad if it was like a 1-to-1 ratio where they're following like thousands of people and they have followers. It always looked good when you're following maybe under 500 and then have like 10,000. Made you look established. And I think at that time when you were creating your company, there was a huge opportunity there because you wanted to look established, and the fast track to do that was like, how do you get followers? So that was like the big ticket item.
yeah. And I don't know, like, I feel like that's not as important now, or and we can kind of touch on
Hmm.
like now a little bit more, but I don't know if there was any real truth to that, but I do feel like there was like an intangible of like, yeah, like you said, looking established and like as weird as it may sound, I feel like that was just the era back then. And so that kind of segued into you and I discovering a certain tool that basically like would how do you call it, like friendship or follower share, where you would basically pay for like certain tokens on this platform, and you could like get followers quickly that way,
Hmm.
but you had to also follow a lot of people, therefore disrupting that ratio that we just talked about.
Yeah.
And it was a great platform. It worked really well. Again, this is probably 2010, 2011. I won't say the platform's name because it's probably name changed and all that kind of stuff, but it was basically just a tool where you could gain a lot of followers by following a lot of people. But it disrupted that ratio. And so I want to kind of kick it over to you because that turned into, that problem of, okay, it's great that I have this tool that gets me a lot of followers. And these are all very low quality followers, of course, because they're not really
Yeah.
interested in your product, and so that's kind of all the stuff that you learn when you're going to business the first time is it's not always quantity over it's always quality over quantity, but that kind of ratio problem created an opportunity, I think, for you to kind of create something. And so why don't you kick it
Hmm.
off first by like, this was your very first product and kind of what it was and, how it solved that issue.
Yeah, I mean, it was exactly as you described, coming from I want to get a lot of followers, but I don't want to follow a lot of people. And using that tool that you mentioned, that was the first step. So you could not pay any money and follow a bunch of people. Once you did that, you got credits on the system, and then people then followed you. And so that worked out well. But once we started using it, I think we quickly realized that these followers didn't last that long and the ratio didn't look good. So I was thinking in my head, how can we get a ton of followers and then like unfollow these people? Because everyone else felt like they were doing the same thing. And I think back then there wasn't as many bots, there wasn't AI like at the forefront. People were real on Twitter, and you could buy Twitter followers. So, in 2010, you could Google like buy Twitter followers, like exactly that query. You land on a page, some company from somewhere would have a bunch of bot accounts and they would follow you. And that worked out well, but you wanted like real people. You wanted people that had profile pictures, had real names, had some tweet history. Not like anyone would actually look through, but it felt so much better. And so, yeah, it was kind of the journey of yes, we can get followers. They're maybe one tier above what you get if you actually paid for them. And two, how do we keep them, but also make our kind of follow to following ratio better? And so I think this started out being I'm just going to make something for Ben because I was interested to see how we could solve the problem. And I think I had done some coding before and like Visual Basic and kind of messing around with things, but I had went to Twitter's API page. I don't even know how I got there. I mean, there's probably a few steps missing in the whole story, but ended up there. I think the top SDK for Twitter at the time was PHP. So I selected that one, not knowing PHP at all, and then kind of went forward with this kind of super basic script that you log in with Twitter. Once you do that, you get a token that basically manages your account. You kind of enumerate everyone that you're following, and then you can make an API call to Twitter to say unfollow that user, unfollow that user. And so essentially automating unfollowing in a massive amount. And then
Mhm.
I think from there, we had used that platform that you were talking about, got a ton of followers from it. And then we ran this script and I kind of iterated on what that should look like. And ideally, you put in the minimal amount of effort and that would unfollow the maximum amount of people. And that worked. But I was like, is there anything else I can do with this? And so I think over the next maybe 2 or 3 months, like I slapped some UI on it, wanted to allow other accounts to log in through Twitter, and ultimately that became kind of the first rendition of iUnfollow.com. So this is, yeah, probably 2010, 2011 era, something that came out kind of scratching my own itch to unfollow all these people. And then it turned up to be like a really, really simple product that I think I charged $2.99 for 1 year, and like put it online. I got my first purchase through PayPal IPN, and like was like, holy crap, I can make money online without knowing anybody. And they're just going to come to my site, unfollow a few people, hit the limit that I had, like the daily limit. And then they're going to go pay me on PayPal to unlock that limit and then keep going. So yeah, it was freaking awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, that's cool. Do you remember like where you were? Is it one of those moments where you remember like where you were when you got that PayPal notification for the first time? Like, or is it kind of just a blur at that point?
No, I think I do remember. I think I was at the parents' house. I think I was like sitting in my bedroom and like the email comes in through PayPal. And I think did like a double take, like, oh, $2.99 for iUnfollow. And I had tested a bunch of purchases myself, and it wasn't a subscription. So it was $2.99 a year. And after that year, it expired. Then you had to rebuy it, which is almost in this day and age kind of what's preferred now because people hate subscriptions. So I guess I was a little early on that. But yeah, I got the email, checked it, and was like, no way. So then I ran to our dad and was like, someone paid me money for $3. I know it's not a lot, but someone paid me money for this like more or less simple PHP that I hacked together to make this kind of front end in jQuery, HTML, HTML5, CSS, all this fun stuff. And the main method I had for learning at that time, since I was in high school, was just YouTube videos. I was Googling things, how to set up PayPal payments in PHP, how to access Twitter API in PHP, Googling, YouTubing, everything. Through all that, pieced something together that someone paid me $3 and just kind of fed that money into SEO. And that's how I got customers. So yeah, it worked out well.
It's super cool. And I want to be super clear with this too. I mean, this is probably 2010, 2011. So you are in high school at this time as like a freshman. Or not, you weren't even in high school yet if it was 2010. It was around that time. Either you were
Around
brand new
that
to high
time,
school, or like at the end of middle school. Because you were not a computer science graduate that you are, of course, right now. And it's amazing to me. It's always been amazing. And I think this is one area that computer science and like just tech does super well, is just how much information you can just learn for free. Like you said, just going on YouTube and Googling. And it's just remarkable that, as I don't know, you must have been 13 or 14-year-old, you can go out there, find that information, have a problem that people have. And in this case, the problem was near and dear to you, which it was, me and trying to figure out how to do Southpaw Industries. But then you take that problem, learn some skills online, create a product and sell it. I mean, that's just, it's an easy get overlooked because it's like, okay, that's just $3. But like, still, that's incredible. And it's, awesome that it's that easy, not easy, but like you can boil it down to something that's simple, where it's just like, I see a problem. I need some skills to solve that problem. Let me create this solution and see if people will pay for it. And people did. Did you have any, it's funny, I think I know the answer, but like, did you have any thought behind the $3 a year, or were you just purely throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck when it came to pricing?
Yeah, I don't think I did any price testing. I
Yeah.
didn't do any indie hacker stuff. Like I don't even know if that existed, but I didn't do any price testing. I think I just put it up there and moved on with my life and thought no one would buy it. Once people started buying it, I was just like, okay, the minimal amount of costs I think I had every month was like a HostGator server, which at that time it was like a shared server. You were just kind of slapped on with other people, shared CPU and memory. I think it was maybe $20 a month. And I think at the end of the day, once iUnfollow got rolling, it probably made like 5 or 6 grand a year on autopilot. I would just have the PayPal app on my phone, and in school, both in high school and college, I just get random notifications of like $2.99, $2.99, $2.99, and it was really cool at first. But then I turned it off because it was so insignificant that it just built up over time. So I like muted the notifications, but would log into the PayPal account every, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. Like it was completely autopilot. Didn't have to touch it, and it was just fantastic. Like I don't think I really understood the power of like online payments, reach through SEO, and making something that's so approachable and low cost, but also makes money. At that time, I just kind of like, this is the first product I made. It did well. Like, I guess, that's just how things are. But yeah, I think looking back on it, I slapped together a decently good code base for the knowledge that I had. And then I think the best thing I ever did was investing money into SEO and pushing that pretty far.
Yeah.
Because, there's a few funny stories at the time. Probably won't go into all of them, but I think the first iteration that I made was you could press U on your keyboard to unfollow people. So at the twitter.com, like I guess a little bit more background on twitter.com, you could go unfollow people, but it was kind of like an infinitely scrolling list. You couldn't have your cursor in one position and just like spam click. That literal UX was the opportunity that I used to make money, which is kind of odd because I guess on Twitter side, they don't want people to unfollow, so they should make it easy. But for people who do want to mass unfollow, I want to make that as easy as possible. So when I started out, it was, I think, 3 users were grouped together in the UI, and you could press U on your keyboard to unfollow all three. Don't ask me why it's three. That's just how it was. And then it evolved to be only one user because I think someone from Twitter reached out and said, "Hey, this doesn't follow our terms of service," or whatever, some document or community standards or whatnot. So then I changed it to just be one person, but I still kept the keyboard shortcut. So in theory, you can log in through my app, takes you directly to a list of all the people you're following. It would do a set difference between people that are following you and you're following, so you could see like who's there and who's not. You could just hold down U on your keyboard and it would just unfollow the people in the list. You'd see a little loading spinner, unfollow, they get removed. And that was it. That was like the whole product. People would get in and get out. They pay for a year access, would probably only use it once. And so I think it was the perfect utility to just get in, get out, pay your money. And like, I didn't have any support. No one complained. It was so cheap,
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. It's funny because it kind of touches on, again, I think I don't want to say like toxic, that's too strong of a word, but like kind of using the system of that other platform where you end up with too many people that you're following, which probably isn't the way that Twitter intended for Twitter to be used, of course. Like
Mm-hmm.
to follow me, I'll follow you back, but I don't really care about your content at all. I'm just trying to get my own followers. And then you build this other tool that's like kind of still, it's not like outside like the terms of use, but like it's kind of like, hey, this is over here. It's not like, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
Twitter didn't like love the ability. I think they wanted people to obviously be able to use the platform easily and unfollow easily if they needed to, but like the pair of those two things, it's funny. Like
Yeah,
you get all these followers that you don't really care about, they aren't interested in, and then they have you over here that comes over and you can just clean up all that action that you did on the other platform. And
exactly.
the end result is you have that ratio for a little bit until people start kind of unfollowing again. Yeah, it's just funny. And I think to kind of tie it back to socials back then, and again, you and I, I'd say for me with Southpaw, like I didn't know what I was doing with marketing at all. It's really about
Mm-hmm.
like the content and like what you're putting out there versus like just how many followers you have and like what you're, how reputable you look online. But I remember using Facebook quite a bit too, aside from just Twitter. And that was actually where I had gotten like more like interaction just because it's a lot of like friends and family. And so like Southpaw, most of your early sales, it's an apparel brand, right? So like, most of the early sales kind of come from family and friends first. It's like, oh, hey,
Mm-hmm.
start my own business. Okay, yeah, I'll buy a shirt, or like our parents' friends like buy a shirt or two. But Facebook was a place where I got a little bit more actual activity. But the place I had the most activity from was actually a forum, like an MMA forum that I would like post on and be like, hey, this is where you can get these kind of cool shirts and like actually kind of like crowdsource some ideas for some designs too there. And so, being in a community, like getting feedback and like actually like hearing from people and like posting that community was actually way more beneficial than just putting random stuff on Twitter and Facebook that didn't really do anything for anybody. But
Yeah.
it's
It's funny you say that because I think at that time, Facebook and Twitter were relatively new, or
mhm,
I don't know what the right word, maybe not new, but they were the main social networks. There wasn't many others. There was, if you ran a business, you had a Facebook and you had a Twitter. That was it. And on Facebook, it wasn't it was different. Like you had friends and family back then. Like the Facebook of today is groups and videos and short form. It was way different back then. You actually had a smaller network. The feed prioritized friend posts and all those sorts of things. So it didn't feel like a business area. That was kind of your social area. Twitter, at least, how it was back then, was very much kind of the business and like casual side and people you didn't know. And I think Twitter was like the perfect spot for business to come in. And I think the success of iUnfollow was that it was the right place, right time. Where when you were creating your business and going through how to look established online, Twitter is the de facto spot at that time, at that era, to look good. And so, it wasn't just you, it was everybody else going to this platform, doing the follow train is what some people called it, where I follow them, they'll go follow me back, and that was what everybody did. And then today, it's just different. Like I don't think people put as much emphasis on it. I think there's bots, there's AI, there's multiple
mhm.
social media platforms. Like I don't think iUnfollow would do as well today. And just to kind of put, the end story on that is when I had graduated college and joined PayPal out of college. I had sold off iUnfollow. I was kind of, having it since 2010 to 2017, and it made me, plenty of money that I put in, a decent amount of work, but it autopiloted for many, many years. And then I sold it off and wrote a whole blog post on it. So if you want to check that out, it should be bradleybernard.com/blog. I think it's one of the early ones. So you might have to scroll down a bit, but yeah, I kind of posted about selling that to a new person, them running it. And I'm not sure who runs it today. I don't really stay on top of it, but I think it
Mhm.
should still exist at iUnfollow.com with minimal code changes as far as I know. But who's to say? Maybe it's vastly, vastly different now. But
Yeah,
it was kind of a fun process.
it is there right now. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty interesting.
That domain kicked butt too. I really stumbled on a good one there because you'd
You
search
know,
Twitter unfollow and that was it.
yeah, and it has the old, I in front of it. Like again, that was a perfect timing where everything was, like iPhone, iPad, it
Yeah.
was, there's all kinds of like abbreviations you can find from, or all kind of brands and names you can find from like those early 2010s to like late 2000s era, where you can see the prefix of I on everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's still there.
And I think even like the about page and the FAQ page, I think like those might even be like my original content. I'm not 100% sure. I don't want to take credit for it if they had changed it, but more or less, I think it's like the same exact tool that I'd written back then. And yeah, I think one of the interesting stories, I had dropped the production database one time. So I'd logged in to my database kind of like administrator trying to fix a bug. And unfortunately, I had tried like exporting the data, but I accidentally truncated the tables. And so I went to HostGator and was like begging them, this is shared server, editing files over FTP, nothing like we have today or anything that I would follow today. It just
Mhm.
wasn't around at that time. So I begged them, I was on HostGator support, please, do you have a backup of my data? Because I just made a big oopsie. And I think it took them 24 hours, but they recovered a snapshot that was maybe a few days old. I don't even think I had backups on. Like it was very, very, rudimentary. And then I'd restored my database, emailed a few people who had purchased, but they weren't purchased anymore since I had truncated the data, and then brought them back into the system, and it all worked. And so it was like an oh crap moment. And then I recovered because HostGator had my back. So yeah, I was really loyal to them in the 2010s, I don't know, 13 era. Then finally moved off once I kind of picked up Laravel and DigitalOcean, Linode, all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's it's interesting. So Twitter, it was like that kind of business tool, like you said, where Facebook was a bit more like social and like your actual friend feed, and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's a great transition into, I don't know how soon after I unfollow, but in terms of being at the right place at the right time, Instagram kind of came out and became this, really popular tool. This is before Facebook had acquired it, of course. And, being able to see your friends' content with like images and all that kind of stuff. And I think it was again at the perfect timing because I feel like influencers were kind of coming around a bit more, like having a big Instagram following like could actually mean something. And so I had shut down Southpaw like right when I actually started getting really serious about college. So I only had it for probably like around a year, and then just figured let's just focus on school and try and get a good job after college. But so Southpaw was done. But I think with Instagram coming around, you saw another opportunity to kind of like play in the social sandbox, if you will, and kind of if you can describe how that was for you and kind of the story there, because I know that one is a bit more of a roller coaster in terms compared to Iron Follow. So it might be a yin and yang, with Iron Follow being super easy, made some money and got to sell it at the end, versus your other one that is a bit of a different story. But I will let you tell that.
Yeah, that one was super fun. I think iUnfollow was the start of my kind of web development career and projects. And again, being attached to the social space, it makes it a bit easier because I have a product if these social platforms are doing well, and if I can fit my product into their life cycle, whether that be plugging the hole and making unfollowing easier, or being kind of that platform to do the follow for follow. So iUnfollow was maybe 2010. The second project I'd worked on, which we haven't talked about, is kind of that follow for follow platform, but for Tumblr. So Twitter was popular, Tumblr was popular. What I tried to do is essentially recreate that platform that we use for Twitter, but on the Tumblr platform. And it worked out pretty well. I think I'd spent 3 to 4 months, which is kind of the high school summer, as you could put it, writing code, 6 to 8 hours a day. I loved it. So that was like my hobby, my passion, building out a better website in PHP. and taking all the mistakes I had made in iUnfollow and applying that. So, you write code and 1 year, you go look back at it the next year, it looks terrible. You think, how did I write such bad code? And so I think in 2011, I had kind of picked up writing this platform. I think I called it Mother Fumbler at the time, just kind of a play on words. I think maybe that was even your name provided. So so I'd written that. That one did pretty well. It launched, got some kind of steam under it. I can't remember how it ended up. Maybe it got shut down. I'm not exactly sure. But I'd spent a lot of time building out this core logic of you sign up with a social account, you have a list of people you can follow. Once you follow them, you get credits, and the system also sucks away a credit. So, for example, if you're on the list, you offer 5 credits. It was a slider between 1 and 10. If you clicked on following that person, you would maybe get 4 credits and the system would take 1 just to kind of swallow a credit away so it's not equal. And it worked out pretty well. The biggest thing to note was it was directly integrated with Tumblr's API, such that if you clicked follow, the follow happened. There's other websites that were the follow for follow train, but you had to do it very manually. You'd click follow, it'd open up a new tab. You'd have to manually click follow while you're logged in, then delete, close that tab, come back to the original website, said, yes, I did that. It completely sucked. I was like, why can this not be fully integrated so that the system knows you followed, which is kind of a check. And then if they did that, reward them. And so, yeah, that was maybe 2011. It did okay. I can't remember how it finished, but I'd written a ton of code. Then Instagram was popping off. Everyone had an Instagram. In high school, people followed each other left and right. The Instagram follower count made you feel more popular, kind of a social dynamic. The same thing with Twitter. Your brand looked good if you had a bunch of followers. So this time I'd already written the core system in Tumblr. What I needed to do is take that, all the mistakes I'd made in kind of developing, launching, iterating on that, bring it to Instagram. And same thing, I think maybe 2012, it was my full summer project, spent 3 to 4 months building it. You logged in with your Instagram, you saw the same sort of UI, you clicked follow, it would go use the Instagram API to officially follow, you get credits, and that was that. And then I think at that time, I had put pricing together. So essentially, you join the system, you had no credits, you could follow people and get credits, or you could pay me money. Mm-hmm. What that could be is $20. That gets you maybe 50 credits, or $1,000, and that gets you 1,000 credits. And at that time, I made the critical business decision to have these large packages that I thought no one would buy. I thought, I'm going to put these large packages because why not? Literally, it's a number in my database. When people pay me money, I go to their, users table. I look at their credits row. I increment that by whatever they paid for. And if they paid $50 and got 50 credits, or $1,000 and got 1,000 credits, it's the same amount of processing. It's just so simple. Yeah. So I added those packages, launched Instapromote, I don't know, maybe September 2012, October 2012 era. And the big thing that I added, which just got hockey stick growth, was doing referrals. That was the second best thing I added, where you could share an Instapromote link. So it'd be instapromote.com/refer/some code. If people join with that, you'd get credits. So you'd sign up to the platform, you'd send it to all your friends saying, hey, you can actually get followers and you're going to get, referral credits off of that. And so it just blew up. I think in October, if I were to visualize a chart, it'd be hockey stick growth of people just joining and using the platform relentlessly. And you can only follow so many people. And so if you followed everybody, if you went to your following list, it would be empty. You followed everyone on the platform. And when it started out, you'd run into that. But as it kept growing, there's just felt like infinite number of people joining. And it was super, super incredible. I think it was the perfect timing because I had done something in Tumblr. I'd used that one in Twitter. I knew what the experience should look like. And I ran into so many mistakes that when I executed on Instapromote, although I didn't know anything compared to today, I think I knew enough to get to where I needed to be and built out a pretty robust system. And I think when you're mentioning the roller coaster story, is everything that I've told so far sounds great. I was making maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a day, which is mind blowing. At that time, I was in high school, again, kind of had the PayPal app open and logged into my sales at instapromote.com a PayPal account. And people just buy these $400 packages. And I'm sitting there on my phone, in third period in high school, oh, that's cool. That's awesome. But I don't think it really hit me, to be quite honest. It didn't the amount of money on autopilot, it did not hit me in the way that it should have or would have today. And so things were going super well, but the site was getting so much traffic that it actually would crash from time to time. So, I had to get off HostGator, which I loved. HostGator supported me in my endeavors for a long, long time. And I thought, this thing is making $2,000 a day. I think I can afford a server that's, $5,000 a month or whatever. So I went out shopping, went to Liquid Web at the time. This was end of October. I went to their pricing page, just like I do on apple.com, choose like the most expensive thing, scale it up, give me all the memory, all the RAM, all the storage, all best CPU.
Yeah.
I think it ended up being like $2,000 a month that I was renting from them as a dedicated server on Intel. So I had purchased that, was migrating all my code and server and database, everything to this new server they provisioned for me. And then the bad news came. So I think I was running on the server for 5 days. My CPU usage in the graph was 1%. So I had plenty of room to grow. Yeah. The load that was killing my HostGator server was a speck on the dot on a chart for my current server. So I was sitting pretty. Growth was hockey stick. Everything was great. I was loving life. Then a fateful day came, I think late October, early December, a mere 5, 6, 7 days after I'd purchased the server and things were looking great. Instagram shut down my API key. So this was a huge problem. The whole system that I created was built through Instagram's API in an official way, such that someone couldn't say I followed that person, but they didn't. Once they clicked that follow button, they were logged in with their Instagram account through my service, and I followed them. 100%, no questions asked. But since my API key was shut down, I thought, crap, like what is going on here? The first kind of plan of action is to get a new API key. Let me go to the developer portal, just request a new one and see what happens. So I think the first day I did that, it worked. And I was like, okay, maybe, crisis averted. I think 24 hours later, same thing, API key shut down. I'm like, crap, like this is not looking good. And so I think a day or two after that, I got an email from Instagram Legal. I'm not sure what the exact name was, but it was like, hey, we've looked at your site. It's generating a lot of API traffic, and we don't believe this fits with our community standards. I think that was the term they used.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, shit, like this is not good, because the hockey stick growth, the amount of payments I was getting, like receiving, and the server that I bought, all would put me in a very financially lucrative spot with a long-term kind of growth plan. But Instagram saying this ain't it, really put like a damper on things. So I remember the moment where I got that email and thought, okay, I don't think I can get a new API key, by seeing something like this. So I was like super sad, went to our dad and was like, go take a look at this email, like tell me what you think. And then he's always telling me like, oh, I'll never forget that day when you walked into like my room and like you had this look on your face that you were extremely sad. And I don't think I was crying or anything, but I think it was the realization of like the 4 months, 5 months of effort, the crazy growth. I kind of had, sparkly eyes of like, where is this going to go? Like, is this going to be like the next startup? Like, am I going to be rich? Then boom, just immediately went to nothing. Instagram shut it down. And honestly, that was history. I had to process a ton of refunds, had to put out communications saying, hey, Instagram wasn't about it. Nothing I can do. Tried my best. The platform people love. But yeah, at the end of the day, that one was making a ton of money. I was super proud of the work that I did, and it just came crashing and burning. And I get, they don't really want a platform that encourages following that's not really real. But I had, eked out a decent chunk of change and learned a ton along the process. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But yeah, it was pretty disappointing. I think I was pretty sad and frustrated that that's the way it would end, especially after all the effort I'd put in like the, week or two beforehand, that I was like, oh, this is going to be a rocket ship.
Yeah, I remember a few things from that time. I mean, I was in school and I was, living at where I was going to school at, but it was, close by, so I still would like come by the house and all that. I remember it was crazy. I can't remember like what the exact conversations were, but it's like, do you like focus on that instead of school? Like, does like mom and dad, do they buy that off you? Like, it was just like crazy. Like, what do you do for taxes and all that? Because you were a minor. I don't think you were even 16 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was crazy, and I think it kind of goes to show too, like just platform risk. It's great to build on these networks and in these these ecosystems like those platforms, but at the end of the day, if they decide no, you don't really have much recourse. I do feel like now, like maybe in modern day, I don't know if there might be a tool that has that like right now. Like I feel like in modern day they might not be as opposed to that, but it was so like you were like I think the first on the scene for that with Instagram that it
Hmm.
kind of like and that tool was growing so much that I feel like maybe that would have been allowed in today's world, especially with like how many bots and everything are all around the place now with AI. But also too, I think if you were, you today and that had happened, I feel like you'd probably like have some conversations with legal and like kind of maybe hire
Hmm.
your own like counsel of like, hey, like how can we get around this? But as a kid, if they say no, you're just like, okay, well, I guess I'm SOL, like I don't really have much option.
Yeah.
And there's great irony because you end up working for that company as an
Oh, yeah.
adult. I mean, I was obviously it was different. This is again before Instagram had gotten acquired by Meta, but of course, some years later you worked at Meta, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it was crazy. I remember that time when it was. What was the like start to finish that it was operational, like live for you? Like, because I remember it being like a couple months, but the way you made it sound, it seemed like it was less than a month. Like, what was like from launch to shutdown? How much time do you think it was active
Yeah, that's
for?
a good question. I wish I had more logs. I could probably dig through my email and toss it to AI and ask since I tested so much stuff like sending myself emails when I bought credits. But if I had to guess without looking, probably development in the summer of 2012 and probably officially launched maybe early September or late August. And again, it started out slow, but it really picked up fast. And I think by October time, it was just kind of going crazy. And that's when I was like, we got to do something. The server's crashing. Our dad had helped a lot at the time, like designing the database schema, making sure it's efficient because that was kind of the core logic behind it. I could slap some UI on it, put some PayPal purchasing, but the core system and PHP and MySQL, that was like the bread and butter. But yeah, probably 3 months, 4 months max. So again, it was a lot of effort to put into it. I was very well prepared and knew what was coming since I'd used the previous iterations and built my own. So that's why it was right place, right time. I had the skills, surprisingly enough. I had the right timing because being in high school, everyone talked about it. And I just thought, why does this not exist?
Hmm.
And kind of a fun fact from that is in the high school era, people would follow me on Instagram. They'd be like, why do you have so many followers? And honestly, I didn't really tell people about the stuff that I did on my own, like in high school, because I was like, I don't want to get made fun of, or like, I'm kind of like the coding guy. Like, I played a lot of games and talked to a lot of friends, but a lot of the coding work I didn't really share too much. And so people would ask me, like, how do you have so many followers? And I was just like, I don't know, like
Yeah,
just
I'm
just just
just
a lot of
cool.
people. Yeah, and people were always so confused. I think like at my peak, maybe had like 3,000 followers, which probably could have had a lot more. I would put myself at the top of the list because I own the site. I have infinite credits, and so I could do what I wanted. And that was kind of my testing period. Is I would add credits to my own account and then immediately like just get a ton of followers, and that's when kind of nodded my head in satisfaction of wow, this system is like built and ready, and it's
Yeah,
firing on all cylinders. And I think that's what kind of hurt the most when it shut down was it's just yeah, like you said, I was a kid. I didn't wasn't going to fight back. Felt very like, oh, legal's coming after me. They must be right. I mean, they probably were, but I think today would have been vastly, vastly different. But yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I think that one was like going out on a high note. Had to do a few thousand in refunds, but when I look back on the amount of effort I'd spent and the growth and the money that I made from it, I was like, that was a huge win. The best project I had for sure.
yeah. I remember a funny thing is I think I came home one time again because I live probably like 20, 25 minutes away from our home and our family home. And I remember I came home one time and you had like a new TV, you had like a new big desk, you had like a giant like air filter in your under your desk, like a giant like air purifier. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Probably.
It was like a big giant like white like mini fridge, and I was like, what the heck is that? And it was like you're like, oh, it's like the filter or something like that. So you had all this new stuff, and I was like, oh, this must be really doing well because yeah, just like I know mom and dad didn't buy all this, I know you did. Yeah,
Yeah,
you were
I had
spending.
money that I didn't really know what to do with. Like it was good for the time for sure. It wasn't like I could, retire and not work at all, but it was something that I wasn't really familiar with. And I was like, I'm just gonna buy a few things. And then after I started buying a few things, I was like, oh, it's kind of nice. What else? What else can I
Yeah,
buy? And then I kind of ran out and was like, whatever. I think the biggest thing I bought was like a home speaker system from Best Buy, like the Magnolia kind of thing. I think I maybe dropped like $2,000 on it. It was like, so cool. Played like Gears of War on like surround sound, super
yeah.
loud. I was like, nice, I could do this because I coded something right place, right time.
which is so funny because now everyone plays games with headphones, so like that
Yeah, I
speaker
wouldn't do that.
system, yeah, I mean, of course, again, 8 or probably 10 years ago or so, but it's funny because all this social like tools that that you built really that became profitable. I think it goes to show that like companies will throw a lot of money at trying to get eyeballs, and that hasn't really changed. I think
Hmm.
today, there's still those platforms. It's of course X now. It's still Facebook. Instagram, I think, is still around. I don't. Yeah, Instagram's around. I haven't been on those
Hmm.
platforms. Just to be super clear, if it sounds like you're like, dude, you don't know that. I haven't been on Instagram or Facebook probably since 2016, 2015, like as a personal like account. I do have X, although I really can't stand it to be honest with you. And so like I'm not the most like online person, but I do have a LinkedIn. But and of course, there's some new players like TikTok now. And I think it's just interesting this show that like, companies will spend a lot of money just trying something, trying to get those
Hmm.
eyeballs. I mean, some of the bigger orders you had from Instapromote, that people were just, they're probably businesses or people wanting to make a business that were like, hey, I need to grow my Instagram page. I don't know if
Hmm.
this is going to work, but let me throw some money at it. People, they spend a lot of money on those kinds of things. And, it's still true today, of course, but I just always found it interesting that like, the ROI might not have been there. So I'd be curious if like you had if Instaprint was around long enough, if you would have had like repeat customers, because what kind of quality, followers are you getting through that kind of system, but
Yeah.
would they find out that everyone, eventually just unfollows them like with iUnfollow? It would have been cool if you could have built your own iUnfollow and just
I
gotten
thought about it.
gotten both parts. Yeah. That would have been awesome. A good
As far as I can
flywheel.
remember, there definitely were people that bought multiple packages, like that came back because I was kind of getting those notifications on my phone and like seeing the email. And so that
Okay.
was kind of the satisfaction that was this system, like they bought trying something, they saw the results, and it's pretty damn near immediate, which is great. And then, reinvested in the product and the company and got the same results. So, and everyone was very supportive when it shut down too. I sent out like a massive email, apology letter, and everyone that didn't get their full credits worth, like refunded all of them, which was painful, but I had logs and database queries to make that happen. But people were like, damn, like I can't believe Instagram shut this down. Like it was so good. And I think
Yeah.
that part felt really good too. Cause I'm sitting there like, oh, well, it's the end of the road for me. I'm sad, but I'm not going to do anything. And hearing the users on my platform, like complain to Instagram or just post about it, I was like, so heartwarming. Like, appreciate that so much. I think before this call, I was kind of Googling like Instapromote.com or other things like that. If you do that on your own, you might run into a few referral links where it'll say like, get more followers on Instagram and then space the referral link. And so those things like still exist. And it's kind of funny looking at it. But yeah, like the links won't work. But yeah, it was a core part of the experience. And that really paid off like so much. So yeah, I think there's a lot of decisions I had made that I thought would be good or I didn't care for, and it turned out to be a huge win. And the culmination of all those things and the experience and the failures I had before made Instapromo like the best product, right place, right time. So I do keep my eyes out. Like you mentioned, TikTok is pretty popular. People like getting followers on these platforms. Like I've done it before. I could do it again. However, I think a lot of these APIs are a little bit bolted down now. The follow for follow thing is it's not on the radar, but it's not unheard of. And so I think when companies see something like that, they're a little bit hesitant. So for me, platform risk is there. I'd be happy to build something in that era. But yeah, I didn't really do any while I was doing Bucks Bite. And I think part of that in my head was I could get something successful. But if it got shut down overnight without my control and I couldn't fight it, that
Hmm.
sucks. And I
Yeah.
think I could eke out some money, but I'm not sure it'd be in my best interest for like a long term product.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm trying to kind of grow just like I don't have like anything I'm selling, but just trying to kind of grow my own online presence. I just feel like in 2024 and onward, it's important for people like as individuals to kind of do that. And
Mhm.
so I do have a TikTok account. I feel like such a boomer. I really haven't done anything with it, and I just follow like random stuff. But that one, I maybe eventually will kind of get around to like investing some time into learning how to use it to my advantage. But I do hear that that's one that people can find some really big success with. Yeah, I just don't know if I'm creative enough to do that. But one I have been posting a lot on actually recently has been LinkedIn, and it's been a pretty mixed bag actually. So And it's funny, we keep talking about all these companies that you've worked for in the past, which is kind of, I didn't think about that when we started this podcast episode, but here we are with LinkedIn. But so I've been posting on LinkedIn a bunch, and just for some context, I already had a pretty high amount of connections. Now, like the quality of the connections can vary. There's some people, of course, that I connected with because I worked directly with them or I'm associated with them. But then, of course, you have some people that you're connected with that are just kind of completely cold outreach. They just asked you, and I would just usually just hit accept for the most part. I've been getting more picky about who I accept with, but when you're in school and you're trying to, especially in accounting, you're getting recruited and all that kind of stuff. Like I would just accept whatever.
You need that 500 plus. That
Yes,
is the
exactly.
metric of when you're new in
Exactly.
college and you don't have 500 plus, you add everybody. The second you cross that threshold, nope.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's weird. Sometimes I feel bad if I like reject something that I don't know. I don't know why I would feel bad, but
Mhm.
but I am more picky now. But so anyways, I already have like, a good amount of like connections on the platform. I don't know what exactly it is. I think it's like 1,000. And so I've been posting a bit more and just things that I think are relevant for like accounting professionals or like, business owners. And it's been interesting. It's been super interesting the kind of responses that I've gotten. One of the things that I try to do is, be useful because I think there's so much noise out there with just general social with tweets and LinkedIn posts and all that kind of stuff that it's important to try and be useful to try and make like your insight or whatever you're posting actually insightful and not just like a regurgitation of something that you've seen before. And so some of the things I've been posting have actually gotten some pretty big hits as far as like impressions and like reactions, I think is what LinkedIn calls it. And it be completely surprised me because I would have thought that video would do way better than just like text, like long text pieces. And so far in my experience, I've been posting occasional videos, sometimes snippets of this podcast, sometimes other kinds of media, and they don't get nearly the impressions as like long form text, which is crazy to me because I'll be honest, I'm more likely to click on a video than I am to read a whole essay on LinkedIn. Just that's my own personality. But there was one post that went super. I don't want to say viral. That's going to make it sound more than it is, but way more impressions and reactions than anything else I've posted. I'm going to
All
try
right,
and
well, you
find it
got to
right
share
now.
it. Over
Yeah,
5,000?
let me see. Okay, let me get a filter for the last 365 days to get all of it. So there was a post I did about basically what makes a big difference in your accounting career. And so I went on about how, you need to know the business. It's one thing to just know the debits and credits, but like you will not be as good of an accountant unless you kind of know like how your business operates, like the ins and outs, not just from, again, like a transaction standpoint, but just like talking to your business partners, understanding the pain points that they feel, all that kind of stuff. So I won't outline it here on the podcast, but I did a post on LinkedIn for that. And as of now, it's like 250 shy of 35,000 impressions.
Wow,
Yeah, and
that's pretty good.
I would have never guessed it when I posted it. And then it has like 82 reactions between like likes and insightful, celebrate,
Hmm.
and then it has four comments. Two of them are from me, like replying to people, and one repost from someone I'm not connected with. So like
That's
really,
very good.
yeah, it was just really interesting to me because again, I do feel strongly about that. Like when I wrote that, I was like, I don't use like Chat GPT to come up with any of this stuff. So if there's like grammar mistakes in there, like I own that. I every now and then I do, if I feel like I'm having trouble like getting something out, I'll kind of say to like Chat GPT or Claude, like, hey, can you just make sure there's not anything obviously wrong, like me switching tenses or
Mhm.
something. But yeah, I mean, it was surprising because I've done other posts, of course, and consistently the like text tends to do way more than the video, and so stuff like that has been really surprising. Yeah, LinkedIn as a platform has been really, really good for the most part. There's some
It's pretty hard though. I
spam.
think, yeah, I think when you think of Twitter, it's like casual business, so you could write whatever you want. When you think of Facebook, it's posting photos or liking groups. LinkedIn is the professional input or side of you. So it feels like you need to say the right thing. You want to
Hmm.
be professional, like you want to put on your best foot forward, I guess. But I think you do kind of get a lot of like junk posts and things like that in your feed. So like there's this pressure to look good, but also you see all these other people just like posting. And so I don't post too much. I think we posted about the pod. I posted like job updates, and I posted a little bit about like building my apps when I was, doing my solopreneur journey. But every time I post, I think I have like a small fear of like, what am I kind of like professional network going to think of this? Because when I post on Twitter, there's 1,000 people that follow me. I probably only know, 100, and they're not professional connections in a different capacity. LinkedIn, right in front of your previous managers, directors, you name it. Will they see it? Who's to know? Will they scroll past and read it? Who's to know? But I think the audience and the professionalism feels like a high stakes environment. But I truly think if you can block that out, post your best content like you were talking about, that's like the right way to do it. It is just another platform. No one cares that much. Like, just if you have good content, you got to post it there. I think it has like that 35,000 impressions is huge. And if you were too scared to post that, you wouldn't get it. And like, I think people kind of struggle with that a little bit because LinkedIn feels like a high stakes professional network.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because I don't know how the algorithm works at all, but like just based on like the responses I've gotten and like the reactions, like more than half of the reactions are people that are from not in my network. So I'm sure like someone from my network must like it or like, celebrate it or whatever. Then it must show up on other people's feeds that I'm not directly connected with. And so it must say like, you know, Jane Doe liked this post or whatever, and it's my post. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was definitely surprising. And I've done a lot of posts since, kind of again that long kind of text, and they've been again doing better than the video, but not as much as that one in particular. So for whatever reason, that one like struck a chord with the right people that, and it got put on their feeds somehow, which is cool, and I'm happy to get all like the positive reactions. It's I don't want to say it's dopamine hit because I try not to subscribe to like the vanity metrics and all that, but it's great to see that people find like alignment with like things that I think, like it's kind of goes to like that sense of tribalism. That's like, oh yeah, there's lots of other accounting professionals out there that think that knowing the business side of things is just as important as knowing the debits and credits of accounting. So it's pretty cool, and I'm going to try to continue. I try to post every day this week, and I think I still have to do some more stuff here,
That's a
but
lot of effort, though. I mean,
yeah.
posting one post, I feel like I reread it 4 times, make sure it's right, still miss something.
Hmm.
Every day is a lot. I mean, it's definitely like, it's good putting yourself out there, and it's good to have the trust and confidence to speak your mind on things that are important to you. And it kind of goes back to like what Aaron Francis says. Like, if you're interested in something, just do it, post about it. You might find people are interested. If not, they're not, and you didn't lose anything. I think people find value in someone who's deeply passionate, sharing cool stuff. Either they're building on it, working on it, learning it, whatever. Doesn't really matter. I think as long as you're passionate about something, you share that. Hopefully, there's an audience on the other side. And I would also like to post a little bit more on LinkedIn, even my Vuxbyte socials, like kind of just like reshare stuff I post on my personal account, which I never like because I think the company socials look very dry and there's like no activity there, even like on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. But I think LinkedIn is pretty untapped right now. I think people should spend more time probably posting. And it's the 80-20 rule. If you don't know what's going to do well, you are going to post a lot. And the one that you mentioned that did well, you probably didn't have the intuition or foresight to say this is going to be a huge knockout. You probably had others that you thought, oh, this is maybe even better, and it didn't do well. Because I've had those moments on Twitter, especially, where I spend and 30 minutes writing something, post it. I'm not looking at the vanity, but I'm kind of sitting there like, oh, what's the initial reaction of the algorithm? And as it kind of dwindles and has 20 views, I kind of scratch my head thinking, oh, I should not put more time into this. It's kind of a negative loop of, if you look at that too much, you're going to say, I'm over it. If you look at it, too much and things go well, you can be like, oh, I need to keep making content that's like this. And that might not be the template that's successful. So it's kind of hit or miss.
Yeah, I echo what you say on Twitter because I've tried to post like content and like interesting stuff on Twitter, and like I think the last time I really tried was like probably the beginning of this year, maybe. I did like a Python and Excel kind of primer with like creating some stuff from Canva and like doing some examples, and I put a lot of effort into it. And I posted it on LinkedIn, which I got some good responses. Then I posted it on X. And again, I don't have that many followers on X, so like I know my expectations should not be as nearly as much as LinkedIn, but like it was basically crickets on X, and I think I had like 13 impressions or whatever Twitter calls it, and like I'm sure 10 of them were from me just refreshing to see. Like I don't know if that counts or not, but like it wasn't anything impressive. And I think ever since then, I think it's still my pinned tweet, to be honest with you. Um, because I heard that's what you're supposed to do is pin stuff to your
Uh-huh.
Twitter page. But I can't stand Twitter. I mean, I think it's just I like it for like news for myself of like sports and like I guess politics. Even though right now I can't stand all the politics stuff. But like as far as like a content for like growing my own personal brand, I just haven't seen it like pay off for me like with the stuff I've posted so far. And like honestly, I don't know. I'm also a pretty like private person in general, and I know that sounds like an oxymoron where it's like, hey, you're trying to grow your personal brand, but then you say you're a private person. Like I feel like X and like Twitter, it's like so much easier to be like like a weird anon, like random post person following you. Like there's so many spam accounts that follow me
Hmm.
on X. Every single day I get like a new follower and it's like, oh, who's following me? And it's just some random, you know, clearly a bot, and I feel like LinkedIn there is definitely a problem with like bots and all that kind of stuff on LinkedIn still, but like it's not as persistent and like there is real value in the connections you have on LinkedIn. So I just haven't really, and I don't think I'm going to as of now, like put a lot of effort into X, like for my own, personal online growth. But um,
Yeah, I do think there's some value in being vulnerable on any platform. I think Twitter is a good one to do it. I mean, maybe not good, but it is a place to do it. But it is a little bit frightening to like post your thoughts, maybe a bit more raw than it would look like on LinkedIn, and like post progress photos of whatever you're working on, like, kind of work in progress. I think people like real people. And if it's very formulated and, I don't know, professional, that's one different category of people that are interested. But on Twitter, almost like the raw and real, because the AI and the bots are so prevalent, that gets more eyes. Like, it's kind of hard to come up with an example, but I think you'd understand it when you see it, where like that's a real person. They're either struggling or doing something cool. And like that's why I'm going to click the follow button. I don't click it very often, not because I don't like people. It's just I feel like I have kind of my Twitter network built up, and so each person I add to that needs to be kind of vetted, and I'll see their tweets for a while. After a certain amount of time, I'll add them, but I'm kind of like looking for the real people, people I'd want to hang out with, talk to in person, not
mhm.
like the one-off funny threads or viral threads, that kind of stuff. I'm not really interested in that. So I think there's been a transition. We've talked about it in the past podcasts of being real, being authentic, not using some of these AI tools. Although when you tell me daily posts on LinkedIn, my first thought is kind of would be nice to pre-write some of that stuff, schedule it, and you're
Yeah,
off to the races because it's a lot of work.
yeah. I've done scheduling. Usually I try and think of the content the day before, then I'll just pick a random time during the next day to schedule something. I've tried to do the mornings, but it's interesting. You think that the mornings always do better, but it's not the case. Again, I don't know the LinkedIn algorithm, but so I'll just pick a
Hmm.
random time. It's usually like whatever. I think it's like on LinkedIn, it like does like a set number of hours ahead of when you're like scheduling the post. But if I'm like writing it at the night before, then I of course don't want to post it at night. But yeah, no, it's yeah, scheduling is definitely a big, like you don't want to do that all live, like off the riff. I think it's better to
Yeah.
try and get like three or four things, at least ideas kind of down, and then you can kind of work from those. That way you're not kind of having to sit and organically think through each time you want to actually post. It's just that would take too much mental drain, I think.
I think one opportunity here, a small call out, if anyone's trying to build an AI product, there's been a lot of people that are also writing lots of content to LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. They have their own voice, but they want to spend less time writing. And so I imagine there's going to be something in the future that spans across all these platforms that's able to take kind of the writing that you've created, either blog posts, LinkedIn posts, Twitter posts, etc. It kind of captures your voice, style, how you speak or how you write. And then is able to generate maybe an 80% blog post where you can maybe on the go record a voice memo. That'll then be like summarized or transcribed. Then it gets fed into this is what my writing looks like, and you generate like a scaffold of a blog post. Then you could go edit and touch it up and make it better. Because I think the speech to text is incredible now. You can talk at full speed and make mistakes, and like it'll figure it out. Like it's really, really darn good. And then two, I think the AI context window, so how much stuff you can kind of put in front of the AI's face, is growing exponentially. So you could take all your blog posts, you could take all the emails you've ever sent in your entire life. I'm not sure if that'd be a good data set, but you get the point. You have a lot that you can throw at it. It can then look at all that and say, based on everything I've seen Ben say in the past 3 years, if I were to emulate this as best as I could, this is what I would write. And I think that can help speed up that workflow. Although, again, like you want it to be human content, the ideas and the thoughts are like that, but making it easier to get done faster to output, that would be a nice game changer.
Yeah, I think I don't quote me on this, but I've mentioned him a few times on the podcast. A fellow named Jason Stats, who's a big like accounting tech proponent, influencer, if you will. I think he's done something exactly like that, where he like gave it all the content that like he's made over the years, and he's done a lot of videos and a lot of like newsletter writing and stuff like that. And I think he made like a video avatar of himself, and like it sounds like him. It looks closely like him. You can tell it's fake, but like it's still pretty impressive. So yeah, I think there's something, I can't remember what he used and all that. Yeah, that's definitely an option. It's the AI kind of side of things with like socials is interesting. So I remember seeing, it might have been on Twitter. It was like there was clearly like a reply that was like AI like generated, and
Hmm.
like a real user could like go and be like, just ask it a random question completely unrelated to like the like actual post that they were replying to, and like the AI would like answer the question, because it was like it would take the user input of like the actual person saying like, okay, like I can tell your AI like how many bananas grow on a banana tree, and like the guy would like answer the question even though it was like completely unrelated to the actual post. It's interesting. You can definitely smell a bot, I think, when you see one. For now, maybe that'll get better over time, but yeah, I try to avoid using any kind of like AI as much as possible, other than like
Hmm.
touch up on grammar and stuff like that, because it does take away from the genuineness and what we talked about before, like being authentic. So yeah,
Yeah.
it makes a difference in
I'm
today's
excited
use
to
of socials.
see kind of like what your LinkedIn future will look like. I turned on creator mode a while ago when I started my own business, and it gives you a lot more insights. I
Mhm.
also got a decent reach for posts, probably not as high as you, but I think that comes with finding the right audience, and it's nice, like making those posts day in and day out, looking back on things after a year and being like, yeah, I did the hard work of putting myself out there, and you never know when those things are going to pay off. That's kind of the hard part, is the whole marketing side of things. Is you spend effort, you wait, things happen. You can never fully trace it back to, hey, I wrote this blog post that did well, but it could be, a piece of the puzzle. I think for me, like doing my indie hacker approach, every time I spent time on marketing, I did a poor job because I didn't feel the validation or success of, writing a blog post. I can't translate that into how many people paid for my product, how many people visited it. So I would just encourage you to keep going. And it's kind of like for our podcasts, who knows where this will end up? No clue. But it's something that we put an effort in, and we kind of see what happens. And so for anyone out there who's trying to post more content, definitely do it. Spend time, make it intentional. But also, you never know, when it's going to do well. So if things aren't looking that good and you have 10 views on Twitter, we've been there, and I'm still there. So keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. All right, Brad, let's see. Let's wrap this up. Anything else you want to kind of chat about as our 10th episode before we kind of close it up?
No, I think that's it. I can kick off with my bookmark. So on X or on Twitter, Javi posted that he set up an automation to turn off his iPad every day. And so I think this is slightly important for people who work on iOS or mobile apps or Mac apps, because you have these devices that are laying around ready for testing, but they're always dead. Always dead. When you need it, you need to go charge it. And his kind of tweet talks about if all the iPads had this, where they turned off every day, because people, a lot of times people buy iPads, they don't use them that often. I'll be the first to admit it. If all these iPads were turned off, he did some calculations saying it would save like 4,500 megawatts of energy, because people wouldn't have the device die, they need to recharge it to full. So I thought it was kind of cool. He's talking about the environment impact and kind of the own productivity for your own workflow, because there are certain software elements of your phone and even on Windows where they'll download software updates. But people do the math of, if you download a software update every day, you're using this much energy or network over like a year time, you're using this much like resources from the environment, which you don't really think about. But like doing it out in plain math of this many iPads, this many charges, it's kind of a staggering number. So I'll probably integrate this with my iPad soon, charge it up to full, enable this Apple automation to turn it off every night. So then I don't have to think. It's just, I'll turn it back on. It should have like at least a 50% charge.
Yeah, it's cool. I'll make mine pretty quick too. So I have a couple things, but the first thing I'll kind of lead with is a company called Numeric. They raised, I think it was like a seed A or A round, whatever you want to call it, $28 million, and it's like a financial data platform. So basically, it kind of, I'm not a user of it, but it was interesting because they kind of touched to a big problem that accountants deal with regularly of, having to look through financial data and like kind of put the context of like what's happening with the business instead of what you're seeing on the financials. So, I'm just reading from their kind of quick pitch here about how they use AI to analyze fluctuations and trends and pull together sophisticated financial reports in seconds. So, it's very interesting. That's a problem that, again, I think people have had to do manually. It's great to see that there's a company out there trying to solve for that and do it in a much more, efficient, automated way. So we'll see if that platform ends up taking off, but it's cool to see them get some fundraising. I'm sure, AI products right now are, very ripe for fundraising. But I mean, as an accountant, it definitely, they have some runway for sure to like make it better than what it currently is. And I'm sure they're not the only ones trying it, but we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Two other quick things. I did read. I've been reading more books. I've been using a Kindle, which has let me read way more than I thought it would. I used to think I was a pen and paper guy, but um, I've been using the Kindle, which has been cool. So I read a book called The Franchise MBA, MBA, not NBA, by Nick Neonakis. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. It was a really cool book. It's about, running a franchise business and like how being a franchisee is a great kind of hybrid into entrepreneurship, but without all the risks that come from like a pure, ground up startup or ground up business. So it's a great book. It was really interesting. Lots of cool things there to kind of take away. That's kind of inspired some of my LinkedIn posts, earlier this week and last week. So, in case you're seeing where all the franchise content's coming from on LinkedIn, it's from that book or inspired by that book, I would mean. And then the last thing I'm currently reading, which has been really insightful, we can talk about this on another podcast. I'm still about halfway through it, is called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And it just talks about, current marketing in today's environment and like how important content, but the right kind of content is for growing a business. And, kind of talks about like the inherent value of like a story, which like humans have, told stories for thousands and thousands of years as like a way to kind of share ideas and all kinds of things. So kind of tapping into that and using it for your business to kind of make sure your customers, see the value in what you do. So really cool book. And again, about halfway through it and looking forward to finishing it probably this weekend.
That's
here.
cool.
So
I need to read one of those. I think that is a very useful guide. I think I could have used that a while ago for sure.
Yeah, I got out a recommendation and I've been blown away. I've been highlighting nonstop in my Kindle app. So yeah, I would highly recommend. Even again, just being halfway through it, it's been really a lot of good insights
That's
there.
cool. Nice.
Cool. All right. Well, good stuff. Episode 10 in the books. And yeah, we'll get it all cleaned up and come back at you with another podcast episode in a week or two.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone. Talk to you later. Hey, hope you liked that episode of the Break Even Brothers podcast. To find more of our episodes, you can go to breakevenbrothers.com or find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Transistor FM. To connect with Brad, you can go to bradleybernard.com or at bradleybernard on X. And to connect with me, you can go to bennettbernard.com or at the Real Tech CPA on X. You can also find us both on LinkedIn. Thanks. See you next time.